Hey guys, welcome back to Team APS Plus. So today I've got a question to pose to you all. What exactly is the intended purpose of Yu-Gi-Oh's ban list? This is one that I think everybody kind of likes to debate all the time. It's like an age-old one, right? Is the ban list really meant to balance the game? Is it just a way for Konami to push new products? Is it a mix of both? What exactly should a ban list like seek to do when it's balancing decks? We're going to talk about a little bit of all of that today. I'm just going to share my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours, of course. By the way, I think I should clear something up for everybody. Sometimes I get comments on this channel where people are like saying, no, like this can't happen. Konami's never going to do this, blah, blah, blah. I just want to be completely transparent here. I'm just a Yu-Gi-Oh player who's just talking into the void. So I don't work at Konami. They never really will take any of my inputs into account when they're making decisions about this game. All of this are just musings that are fun to talk about on camera, and I just want to hear from you guys what you think of them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the ban list then, shall we? What spurred this thought in particular was another post I'd seen on Reddit where somebody compared Salamangrate Gazelle to Tearlament's Rhino Heart. And they were, of course, a little bit upset because Salamangrate Gazelle is a card that like stayed limited for a very long time. And meanwhile, you've got, something like Rhino Heart, right? That is at 3 and is just a better Gazelle in a lot of ways, right? Like they both have similar functions, but Rhino Heart can just summon itself when it goes to the graveyard, and then it summons itself and like sends a card, and that can trigger off lots of combos, and it's a whole thing. And of course, the Tearlament's archetype is just relatively speaking a lot stronger than Salamangrates are. So why is it that a deck like Salamangrate still has to like stay kind of in something of a nerfed state when Tearlaments get to have 3 copies of this? And you get the picture, right? And it's been that way for as long as it has been. Now, there's a lot of other cards I think this applies to as well. One that comes up a lot is like Orcus Harp Horror. That's something that many people want to see at least limited to 1, and it's just been banned for a very long time, and Konami seems intent on not really changing that, at least not anytime soon. But the thing is, we're dealing again with like Kashtira and Tearlaments that are just stronger than Orcus probably really could hope to be. I mean, heck, Orcus would have to deal with the fact that Bestials exist in the game today, which is its own conversation. But anyways, there's that. There's Servant of Endymion. It's funny how a lot of these cards all came from like 2019. So it just kind of got me to thinking that it sometimes feels like Yu-Gi-Oh's ban lists, you know, they really they move slower than the game itself moves. Is kind of what I'm trying to say here. So it's like when a new card or cards like archetypes, things like that come out, it sometimes feels like the new cards are strong, but the old cards that had to get banned and limited that aren't maybe as strong still stay banned and limited for like the next year, 2 years, sometimes even like 3 years. I mean, we saw how long it took for a lot of the Shadal cards to start finally coming off the ban list, or cards like Elemental Hero Stratos. And oftentimes, when these cards eventually come off the ban list, they don't even really get like play at all. I mean, it took ages for things like Night Assailant to move. It took ages for just all kinds of things, like a Summoner Monk, just all these things that like they had a reputation many years ago for being extremely busted and powerful and part of these strong decks. But honestly, when you throw them into modern day Yu-Gi-Oh, they just don't even really make a dent. And on one hand, I get it, right? I think Konami, they have to be a little careful with a card because if a card was ever strong enough to find its way onto the ban list, then you have to sort of take your time with moving it off the ban list. And, maybe it's better to play it safe and like let a card stay banned or limited or whatever for longer than it maybe needs to be, even if there are stronger cards that exist and stronger themes that exist. But I'm not gonna lie, I think that given the power curve that Yu-Gi-Oh's taken in just the last like few years alone, there are very few cards that are like left on the ban list, at least archetype wise. Like I know that there's like extremely old like spells and traps and stuff that are maybe just gonna be there forever. But I'm talking about like as archetypes go. I really think that there are a lot of cards on the ban list that could just come back, and I just don't know that they would do anything. So it makes me think that yeah, Konami just purposefully maybe takes things a little slow with these ban lists because they know that that's just the safer way to do it, or maybe they're just doing it to sell a lot more cards. And that's kind of the, I guess, more dark, cynical approach to it is just that Konami knows that Orcus Harp Horror or, Servant of Endymion or whatever could come back. But if they came back, maybe people would be inclined to try those decks out and play them, and then they wouldn't be buying the new stuff, because you got to buy your tier cards, you got to buy your Kashtira cards, right? So maybe there is a bit of a like sales motivation to the ban list. And to be clear, I think that that's probably fine too. It's maybe a little bit, manipulative and stuff, but I do believe that it sometimes takes a ban list to get players to kind of like move on from cards at times. I think certain archetypes have just been very strong and like stayed that way. Even it's funny we're talking about 2019. 2019 was actually a format that was so like strongly defined with like Thunder Dragon, Sky Striker, Salamangreat, and like an Orcus, that a lot of the new archetypes that came out that year, like Marincess, just didn't really make a dent because they literally were not strong enough to do anything. And so it kind of took Konami eventually just hitting everything in like early 2020 so that players were forced to play like new things. And I think there's like a bit of benefit to that. Like, so Yu-Gi-Oh would get boring if people played the same things for the whole time, but if the same things are the strongest things, then it's going to be, players will be hard pressed to like move on from it. Sometimes it happens. I mean, like sometimes the power creep is strong enough on its own that there isn't even a ban list needed. Last year, I think, is a really good example of that, where Sword Soul and Despia didn't really get like ban list hits. I mean, they got maybe some small indirect ones, but the core decks themselves, I don't really think ever got hits, if I'm remembering correctly. So it really says something that, Sprite and Tyr and, Bestial and Kashtira have just managed to completely push those out of the picture without even really like trying that hard. So I guess in that case, Konami just felt like a ban list hit wasn't needed because they knew that the thing that was coming was just more than strong enough to solve the problem for them. There was the last point that I kind of wanted to make, and I'm trying to remember it actually. But it's basically, I guess, that with the ban list, I think Konami has sort of stopped even seeing it as a means of outright game balance and more like game control. So you can read that cynically as like, it's just a way to manipulate sales and like push new product, or you can read that maybe in a more charitable way and just say that it's to kind of get players to move on to new things or solve problems or just adjust like how much people will want to play a certain deck. But I think no matter how you spin it, the ban list nowadays is more so for control. It can be control for good, it can be control for bad, but it's just more about Konami kind of making sure that the players are doing what they want them to be doing. Sometimes that's making a more balanced and super diverse format. Other times it's maybe making more of like a tier 1 format. And other times it's like something in between. Sometimes I feel like it definitely runs a bit too late. I know like that was the sentiment with a lot of ban lists last year, was like certain cards were just getting hit on these lists and it felt kind of like, I guess, outdated a little bit. I know sometimes it just, I don't know, it's all over the place with Konami. Like, I don't know if I really land on any one spot with it. All I can really conclude, I guess, is just that the ban list nowadays seems like it's for control. And I guess I would contrast that to the really old days, like around like kind of the 2004, 5, 6, 7-ish days, where it really did feel more like the ban list was, I think, about game balance. But that's not me trying to be like a Yugi boomer here. I mean, I really do think that the ban list is like, it's doing its job. Like, I'm not complaining too much, but it's just something that's interesting to think about. I don't know, I'm curious. Where do you guys land on it? Do you think that the ban list kind of has taken on a different role today? And what do you think the role of it ought to be? Like, when should a card get hit? When should a deck get hit? Should a card get hit just because players are complaining about it now? That was another thing I wanted to point out too, is like, sometimes there are cards that players complain about and they never touch the ban list once, right? I think, Evenly Matched, a really good example. I remember that came out and people were like, this card's so broken, limit it, ban it. Konami never did. I remember the Reincarnation Droll and Lockbird combo with Trick Stars and stuff. And that seemed extremely game-breaking. Konami never hit it. Coral Sword Dragon, Konami never hit it, right? Like, AA Zeus, Konami never hit it. Even Access Code Talker, I remember like, not long ago, like in the middle of last year, people were like, oh my God, this card needs to get hit. Konami never hit it. And sometimes like time just goes on and players just adapt and the ban list never has to come out. So I don't know, there's all these different scenarios. What do you guys think? Do you feel like Konami is using the ban list more for good, more for bad? What's the right and wrong way to use a Yu-Gi-Oh ban list if such parameters can even be made? And yeah, what else do you want me to talk about in Yu-Gi-Oh? I thought this was a super interesting one because like I really do want some of the cards from like 2019 back. I'd love to see Thunder Dragon Colossus back, but then again, it'll probably get abused. Or maybe not. Who knows? All right, anyways, that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Make sure you subscribe because I'm trying to drop more and more content on this channel, but you got to be subscribed so you can watch it. Yeah, okay. Talk long enough. See you in the next one. Pass turn.